Breaking news out of Pennsylvania. Fox News can confirm that Rick Saccone has conceded last week's special election to Democrat Connor Lamb. That's a huge setback for Republicans ahead of November, and the upset victory reportedly has Democrats considering a centrist approach to the midterms. But President Trump ain't buying it.
It doesn't matter what Democrat candidates say on the campaign trail, because once Democrats get to Washington, they always do the same thing. They vote for the liberal Pelosi agenda down the line, straight down the line, every single time.
Both political parties could be facing an identity crisis come November, but only the Republicans have an action hero who believes he has the answer. Former California Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger has teamed up with Ohio Governor John Kasich in an effort to reshape the Republican Party in the Golden State by moving it to the center. So are we heading towards the middle or to the extremes? Here to weigh in, Washington Examiner political columnist Kristen Soltis Anderson. Now first, Kristen, the Saccone concession, how big is this news?
I don't think it's very big news, in part because we've all sort of been operating for the last week under the assumption that Pennsylvania 18 was a loss for Republicans and a win for Democrats. So I don't think that necessarily changes anything, but it reminds us that in this one district, Democrats were able to find a candidate who matched the district. The challenge for a party like the Democratic Party is, are you going to be able to pull that off in every district across the country, or are you going to get hung up in primaries where the Democratic base demands candidates who are part of the resistance?
Yeah, Connor Lamb, a very attractive candidate, but he didn't have to run against someone from his left, and most candidates do. President Trump just made that point, that the Democrat Party is probably even more so than the Republican Party, pulling their candidates to the extreme.
Well, what's interesting about the Pennsylvania 18 example is that in that case, you had someone who said, I don't support Nancy Pelosi. And Nancy Pelosi did not go to Twitter and start beating up on him and pick a fight within her own party. She just shut her mouth and let him win, and now she's got him as a vote in Congress. And I think Republicans sometimes, we're not quite that savvy. When somebody within our own party goes a different way, we love to have these fights, we love the combat, but sometimes that leads to the wrong candidate winning in one of these primaries, and it makes it really hard for them to win in a general, either by picking someone who's too wishy-washy to actually energize the base enough, or someone who's too extreme and can't win over those voters in the middle, who you do need to win a general election.
Yes, and the governor, he has a good point about California, because centrists can work in California. But I think we learned after the 2012 election, do you remember Mitt Romney, after he lost, the Republican Party came together and they did a big study and they said, this is what we have to do. We have to go to the center, or we're never going to win over the American, the minorities, the Democratic constituencies, et cetera. Well, that didn't work for 16 Republicans I know. Trump came in and knocked them all flat. So maybe the Republicans need to look to the president and maybe not copy him exactly, but learn from his playbook.
So I actually will disagree with you a little bit there, in part because candidates who have tried to steal from the Trump playbook have not actually succeeded in the last couple of months. A lot of what Trump does is very specific to his own appeal, his own brand. But I think it really depends on where you're talking about. So a place like California, if you're running as a far-right Republican, it's just not going to work out for you. If you're a Republican in California, there's a different type of strategy that you need to win statewide than someone who's a Republican running in Mississippi, than someone who's a Republican running in South Carolina. So one, national parties have to be more comfortable with allowing for a little variation from state to state, from region to region. But we also have to, I think, realize that sometimes it's not about moving to the left or to the right. I actually think that's what Donald Trump got right in the 2016 primary. You had some candidates saying we do need to move to the center, we need to broaden our appeal. You had others, the kind of Ted Cruz faction, saying we need to double down on our base, get them really energized. And Trump kind of blew that up. There are some issues where he's quite conservative. There were some where he's just pragmatic. He's not really ideological. And by kind of scrambling that left versus, or that right versus center calculus, he was able to blow up the assumptions in the primary process and stun a lot of people like me in our industry who thought it would be this left-right divide.
Yeah. Tariffs is a great example, which is why he did so well in Ohio, Pennsylvania, places like that. Thanks, Kristen.
Thanks for having me.